avenge Khamenei. They've also done it to respond to the over 15,000 ceasefire violations by the Israelis. So there's a multitude of reasons. But what Hezbollah have done during the last couple of days, a lot of people are referring to this. A lot of analysts are calling this a miraculous comeback. And first of all, I'm going to give you all the facts. I'm going to show you what has actually taken place on the battlefield, and then I'll give you the analysis, okay? But you can see on the map, I've manually, personally spent the last days mapping all of these flashpoints, skirmishes, bases that have been struck all over South Lebanon, all over the Syrian Golan Heights, all over the north of Israel, all over Tel Aviv and Haifa, every single point. And you'll see when we get to the analysis why this is so utterly significant. I'm going to try and go base by base or skirmish by skirmish, but I've broken these down into a couple of groups, right? So the first thing I wanted to start out with is the skirmishes, okay? So the most significant thing that happened immediately was this small tank battle, although it was less of a tank battle and more of a tank graveyard. So this happened in this location over here. You can see where the blue line is, right? You have Kafr Kila, you've got Mtulle, and Kafr Shuba Hills. Okay, so what happened is Hezbollah went and took out an Israeli Merkava tank. They took out a second Merkava tank, and then they waited for the recovery teams to come from the 188th, which is based, if you look, just if we go back, south a bit here, to Riwaya. Rawiyah. So these are the two forward bases where the 188th are based out of, and they also have their main headquarters at Nafah, at Camp Yitzhak. Okay, so that's where the headquarters is, but they also have the tanks kind of waiting all the time here, and also directly on the blue line. So overlooking the Lebanese, constantly kind of menacing them. So Hezbollah knew that they're going to send tanks to come and pick up the destroyed ones. We've seen this before in Gaza. As a matter of fact, the same exact thing happened today, and I'll come back to that in a bit. But Hezbollah knew that the Israelis are going to send in an armored vehicle to try and rescue the first destroyed one. And so what happened is they again ambushed those repair crews as well. And so in total, they took out 5 tanks. Okay? 5 tanks, and I marked them here on the map. So you can see in Kafr Kila, in Mtulle, and the Kafr Shuba Hills, right? So that's the most significant entrance that you could possibly imagine into the actual conflict, right? After that, so again, I'm not going to go through this chronologically. We're just going to talk about the skirmishes first of all, okay? So after that, after this, they took out these 5 Merkava tanks, okay, from the 188th Brigade, and they did this using Kornet anti-tank guided missiles, ATGMs, right? So after that, there was also an ambush that they carried out against these border surveillance sensors, and we'll talk about Aitarun in a second, but I was there a year ago, right? It's right on the blue line, and you can see these Israeli towers that are just basically, their only purpose is signals intelligence and electronic warfare. So you'll recall during the Gaza genocide from 2023 to whenever the ceasefire was again, Hezbollah were constantly targeting these towers, right? Like, some people didn't understand why. They thought, oh, it's a radio tower. No. That infrastructure is more valuable than Israel's entire fleet of jets. Like, if you take into account not just the towers, but all the manpower and the electronics required to analyze the data and process it, I would say it's even more valuable than that. So, all of their surveillance capabilities, their eyes and ears depend on this stuff. Now, of course, the towers themselves are manned by actual crews, right? You have Israeli troops that are actually running these things, and that's what they were targeting first. I'll get to the actual infrastructure in a bit, but they took out. They did this with Fallout 1 rockets, right? And then also in Hula, they took out an APC. I marked that over here. So in Merkaba and Hula, they took out these 2 APCs, armored personnel carriers, troop carriers, and they did that with Elmas 3, and then we also had in Nebi Sheet this, I don't know what to call it really, it's not really a skirmish, it was more of a raid, an attempted raid by the Israelis, and you can see how far north I'm going here, right? You see where the helicopter is up there. Look how far away that is from the battlefield. And you can also, you'll realize also that it's to the west of Syria, right? So we're not talking about the Golan Heights anymore. We're talking, you know, way further up. This is like, you know, I didn't measure the distance, but, you know, it's very, very far. It's, I mean, halfway up the country, okay? And this happened a few days ago on March 6th into 7th, and they tried to do another raid in that exact same spot again tonight, like just in the last couple of hours, and it failed. I'm not going to go into the whole narrative about why they tried to do this raid. It's a bunch of bollocks. They massacred a bunch of people is what happened. And the really important point here is that Syria, now that it's under Journalist's control and Al-Qaeda, and, you know, it's a CIA puppet now, that's how the helicopters went in. Because if they had gone in through the south of the country, if they've gone in through, you know, if they've flown over the blue line, you know, Hezbollah would have seen them coming a mile away. And they couldn't have gone anywhere inside of Lebanon without Hezbollah actually knowing about it. So what's really, and same thing with the Golan Heights, right? They would know about it. So what's very striking is that basically they went around through Syria with no resistance whatsoever from this new CIA Jolani government. And that is one of the differences that you have between Assad and this puppet now who is basically serving Israel and Washington. Twice he's done that. Not to mention the land that's been given. I'm not even going to get into it again. You know, you already know. I've reported on it extensively. But that is very striking. And to give you the conclusion of what happened during these raids, Hezbollah wiped the floor with the Israelis, right? Both times. Today, they shot down a helicopter just in the last couple of hours during this Nebi Sheet raid. And again, the same thing. I mean, not the same thing in terms of helicopter, but they basically failed the Israelis in carrying out the raid the other day as well. So it's quite astonishing that they were prepared both times. But that's what happened, right? So in addition to that, okay, moving on from Nebi Sheet, this is a bloody long list, right? You can tell I've worked on this for a while. Yeah. So what else did we have in the skirmishes? So yeah, we already talked about Merkaba, and then also, yeah, I think that's it for the skirmishes for now, right? This is not a complete list because every time I go to finish and go live, right, you can blame Hezbollah for why I didn't go live. Every time I thought I was finished, they just go and like start attacking again, like 10 new targets, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go update the map, and then they just, by the time I'm done, there's another new target. It's never ending. Okay, so I'll talk about them more afterwards. But moving on to Group 2, what is Group 2? Group 2 is about the sensors, right? It's not about the skirmishes. It's the infrastructure that Hezbollah have been trying to target and why that's significant. Okay, so you know the whole point is to blind the Israelis. And you look how extensive this is. It's quite astonishing, okay? First of all, in Nabatiyah, they shot down a drone, okay? This is a surveillance drone that was shot down. Another drone was shot down today. Actually, I have a video of the first incident that I'll play for you. I can fetch it. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. This is from March 3rd, okay? So this is the first instance where they shot down a Hermes... yeah, you should be able to see it now. Yeah, you can hear those things when you're in South Lebanon or in Gaza, and the thing is like right above you. You can see it, you can hear it, and I think it's intentional, of course. You know, there's a whole psychological warfare aspect to this. And also there's the aspect that they just don't care because they're terrorists. So anyway, sorry, I'm supposed to be neutral, right? So anyway, going back to the map. Yeah, so Nabatiyah, they took down their eyes with that drone. They took down another drone today. And then in addition to that, they hit Meron. Okay, so Meron is one of the more important bases that the Israelis have. It's very, very high up. You know, until they capture Mount Hermon in Syria, this is probably the most important one. It's difficult to explain, but basically all of their northern command and their air force rely on this base, right? It's the crown jewel. And Mount Hermon is more of a newer addition. Okay, but this has been a long time piece of their infrastructure because they simply couldn't capture the other one in Syria until recently. And they serve slightly different purposes, right? But this is the one that Hezbollah struck Okay, and in addition to that, they also struck here in all the way in Haifa. Okay, they struck this maritime monitoring station, right? It's called Stella Maris, and they also, so this is basically the eyes and ears of the Navy, right? The Israeli Navy. They also struck just nearby the Iron Dome radar over here. Okay, and they also struck Haifa Naval Base itself, but I'll come back to that in a bit because it's not, we're talking just about the eyes and ears right now. Over here, there's another piece of Israel's eyes, surveillance and SIGINT that they struck. Sometimes it's difficult to read these names because what the Israelis do is they take an Arabic name, they bastardize it, they turn it into quote unquote modern Hebrew, and then they write it in Latin. And so it's like it's gone through 3 meat grinders. And so even though like I would know how to say it perfectly, I'm just looking at that and like, what the hell is this? Okay, so sometimes I just can't, I'm not even going to bother pronouncing some of these things, right? But I know exactly where the coordinates are, okay? That's one of the towers that they took out, okay? What they did here is, again, they targeted border surveillance sensors, and they used Falak 1 rockets, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, hold on. In addition to that, what else did they get? Yeah. So, they hit in Yiftah, right? I think, as well. And where is that? Give me a second. It's over here. Yeah. Right, you can see here all along the blue line, you've got all of these towers, okay? The ones I was just telling you about earlier, that that are omnipresent, and they're perched up on all these hills, so they have kind of a vantage point over everything. So this is Zerait, I believe, right? Again, it's been bastardized by the Israelis, but that's one of the towers that was hit by Hezbollah. Here in Shamira, they hit the barracks. Then if we keep going along the blue line, yeah, here's Yiftah that I was telling you about. They hit the barracks there as well. And also, if you look here at Malikiya, they hit the tower there as well. So taking out all the eyes and ears and the crews that man these surveillance posts. And here as well, right? This is another one of the places they hit. Keep in mind also they're hitting these observation posts and towers multiple times, right? Several of these places have been hit multiple times already, not just once. So after that, right, we move on to more strategic targets, right? Not these strategic targets, but I'm talking more about command and control. So, the commanders, the headquarters, they're actually running these outposts along the blue line. So Hezbollah hit, for example, Camp Kel'a, I believe is the right pronunciation. Okay, so this is, if you look at the blue line here, we are still in the Golan Heights, but we're in Syria. Okay, so this whole area here is the Golan Heights, the Syrian Golan Heights. Okay. And it's littered with bases. I mean, like what you see on the map here, these are just a few. It's not even half of it. It's not even half of it. Believe me, I had to limit what I show you. Like I started putting on all of the things just for fun, right? But I had to limit it to actually what was just struck. So they hit this one over here, Camp Kel'a, okay, yeah. So that was struck. They hit Ramat David Air Force Base. This used to be a Royal Air Force Base. Again, look how far away that is now from the front line. Okay, you see how far away we've gone. So I believe their target was the aviation fuel depot at Ramat David, right? But look how far away that is from the front line. Okay, and it's still not the furthest one. It's still not the furthest one. They also hit the Leviathan gas platform, although I should have put that in the more strategic one. Yeah, let's keep that for there. But if you look at also Nebi Sheet, and you look at these skirmishes that happen here, all of those, the Israelis would not even be able to insert themselves or try to insert themselves into Lebanon without these observation towers, without the bases at Meron, in Haifa. They rely on all of these nodes. It's absolutely impossible for them to function without them, right? They're not guerrilla fighters that are able to just kind of blend in the field and, you know, operate by themselves and think on their feet. No. They're completely dependent on a whole chain of command and control and logistical supply. So, you know, the reason that Hezbollah are hitting all of these places, it's not random. It's very, very specific. Okay, and it's all in relation to the Israeli occupation that you have in Lebanon. Here's also, if you look at Camp Yitzhak or Nafah base, right? So this is the headquarters. It's the divisional headquarters for the 210th, right? And it's also the brigade headquarters for the 188th. So 210 division is basically in charge of all the Golan Heights of this section. And then inside of that, you have the 188th Armored Brigade. Sometimes you'll have a command post like this one where they have co-headquarters or joint headquarters for multiple structures. So that's the case here. So Hezbollah hit that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they were targeting the divisional level comms relay. Okay. So, and also you could also consider it a decapitation strike in a way, right? Get lucky, maybe you hit with the commander. So it's of course both personnel and infrastructure, and they did this with Katyusha rockets, 122 millimeter, if I'm not mistaken. In addition, they hit Ben Gurion, right, or as we should probably call it, David Grün, right? That would be the right name. But Ben Gurion Airport. Now you might be under the impression that this is a purely civilian airport, and you'd be wrong, actually, right? They always say Beirut Airport is full of weapons, right? And you even had journalists coming in and doing a tour, like, you know, to the point that we have to disprove, you know, like obedient slaves to the world, that there are no weapons in Beirut Airport. Please don't strike it. You know, it's dehumanizing in a way. Like, I wouldn't even, you know, that claim should just be utterly ignored. And the irony here is that, as usual, every Israeli accusation is a confession. So the Israelis not only have, you have to understand, they share runways. First of all, the runways are shared by military aircraft and civilian aircraft. They have weapons coming through Ben Gurion Airport. They have American jets, bombers, logistical supply lines running through Ben Gurion as we speak. As a matter of fact, this is the primary hub for the war in Iran right now. It's Ben Gurion. It's not any other airport. It's Ben Gurion. In addition, they have IAI, which is it's basically part of Israel's military-industrial complex. They do research and development, and their offices are located in the complex. Right now, it's, you know, if you look at JFK is also running weapons, which might surprise some of you, but it's true. Right now, Heathrow, for example, as far as I know, is not an RAF base. It's not a joint RAF base. I think there's an RAF base like about 6 kilometers north from Heathrow, but Heathrow itself was handed over to civilian authorities in like 1946 after World War II. My point is that, you know, for a lot of us, this is shocking that you have a civilian airport being used in every capacity possible, like R&D, logistics, you know, bombing runs. Okay, this is shocking to some of us, especially from people who claim that the other side is using human shields all the time. Do you understand, like, why this is so shocking? Because the hypocrisy of it all is so Israeli. So in any case, that is what Hezbollah were hitting. They weren't hitting the civilian part of it. They were trying to hit the there's a reason I put a factory icon here, if you can see that, right? The reason I put it there is because they manufacture parts for weapons. Yeah, give me a second. I've written all of this down here somewhere. Give me a second. Yeah. So the reason they hit Ben Gurion Airport was to go after these Arrow and Iron Dome production lines. Yeah, Lahav and Elta wings. That's it. Right. Now, you can go and say, well, that's purely defensive. Yeah, but it's military. I mean, if Hezbollah were manufacturing, you know, hypothetically, forget Hezbollah, let's say anyone in Lebanon, anyone, right? If they were manufacturing, plasters or like band-aids for the army in Beirut Airport, the Israelis would use that as an excuse to bomb it. So don't come here and start blurring the lines. Anyway, that's the reason it was struck. Okay, you can disagree with it. I'm not here to tell you that it's right or wrong. I'm just pointing out the Israeli hypocrisy and the reason why it was struck. That's all. So in addition to that, the Israelis, what else? What other targets did Hezbollah hit for them? Yeah. So of course, Rawiyah base itself was struck, right? I told you the 188th Armored Brigade are based there. Let me pull that up on the map again for you. So, some of these targets, as I said, were hit twice, right? And they were hit for different reasons, targeting different things, right? Sometimes they're targeting the personnel, sometimes they're targeting the vehicles, sometimes the logistics, so that's the reason. Yeah, here, give me a second. Right next to Kal'a, so... Yeah. There you go. So there's, by the way, two bases. There's a Rawiyah base north and base south, but they're right next to each other, and they're both in the Syrian Golan Heights. So... Yeah, in addition to that, right? In addition to that, they hit the Shamera barracks. So the Shamera barracks have housed the headquarters of the 91st Division. Okay, so that's a forward command. That's why they were hit. And then also the Katsavia base, right? Katsavia is over here. It's honestly astonishing, like, when you're trying to map this yourself personally, right? It's not the first time, but there are so many Israeli bases next to each other that it's very, very, very easy to get mixed up. Very easy, right? Like, they're loitered absolutely all over the place, right? It's astonishing. This is nothing what you're seeing here. Absolutely nothing. So in any case, that was hit. Because Katsavia, the reason they hit that is because it's basically Golan Heights HQ, right? For artillery and armor coordination, okay? Now, moving on to the strategic ones, right? If this wasn't strategic enough for you, the real strategic ones. Now, look where we are. We're in the Syrian Golan Heights, okay? Zoom out here. So you can see Hezbollah, they've divided their campaign into all these small structures, right? You've got basically southern Lebanon, you've got the Syrian Golan Heights, you've got northern, quote-unquote, Israel, okay? And then you've got Tel Aviv. Okay, so look at all of these targets that have been struck in Tel Aviv. These are strategic ones, right? So we talked about Ben Gurion Airport. There's Ramla base as well, okay? And that's basically where they have the home front command, right? If I'm not mistaken, they do processing as well for conscription. So that's kind of just the idea behind striking that is just to disrupt, cause chaos in the supply line. I mean, of soldiers, not the actual logistical supply line. When we talk about logistics, you look at Trifin. God, what a name. That one was definitely to hit actual logistics, okay? They have national logistics, supply, training there, okay? That's also like on the outskirts. And if this is actually not too far from the Weizmann Institute, by the way, right? It's not too far from it. So in addition to that, Hezbollah hit the Tel Hashomer base over here, right? So that one does national induction, medical, they've got medical core warehouses and so on. They also hit the Tel Haim base, okay? So that one is also called Gililot, right? And that's where they have the military intelligence headquarters. So that's Unit 8200, which you might have heard of before, right? They do a lot of cyber warfare and so on. And in addition to that, there's Bilu base. So they hit that one. That one houses the, I think, what was it, 35th? Yeah, 35th Paratroopers Brigade. And in addition to that, Cyprus, right? Now, when I say Cyprus, I mean literal Cyprus, okay? I'm going to zoom out here. And you already know the reason why Cyprus was hit, because there are Americans on the RAF base in Accredited. Okay, give me a second to... There it is, right? So as soon as Keir Starmer went and said, oh yeah, there's, we're happy to let the Americans use our base, that you can see the airstrip there. Hezbollah went and hit it. And we know it was Hezbollah because the MOD, the Ministry of Defense, came out and said it wasn't Iran. And you had a bunch of morons going, oh, Israel is trying to drag us into a war, like as if Keir Starmer isn't already riding Donald Trump into a battle. I mean, there's, you don't have to rob people of agency, right? Again, I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying that there is reason enough from a purely objective point of view for Hezbollah or for Iran to strike this base from a strategic viewpoint, because it's actually killing them, right? It's attacking them. So you don't have to go and start reaching and making up conspiracy theory bullshit, okay? And you don't have to rob the people in the region of agency and of their capacity. I mean, absolutely within their range, okay? If you think that's too far for Hezbollah to strike, I've got news for you. It's absolutely not too far. It is not. I don't think we've even seen their most capable rockets yet. I genuinely don't think we've even seen them. So look at also these targets I was just pointing out in Tel Aviv, right? All of these, it's not just about the distance. It's also, oh, and of course the Palmachim Air Base. I forgot to mention that one. They hit, I think, drones on the runway here, right? Like, you see how many targets there are, you just get lost. But the point is that Hezbollah are back, okay? Everyone thought that Hezbollah are gone. They thought Nasrallah is gone. Al-Daif is gone. They did a decapitation strike on the leadership, and they hollowed it out, and it's over, and no. And people that are on the Israeli side said this, and people that even support Hezbollah said this too, because they were they were out of desperation. They were just war fatigue, whatever. My point is that both of them were wrong. They were wrong. This is so intense. All of this has happened in the span of a week, right? I'll show you a quote from Israeli media to kind of illustrate my point. Okay. Here it is. Okay, so on the first day of Hezbollah's entry into the fighting, 10 attack incidents. On the second day, 20 incidents. On the third day, 36 incidents. On the fourth day, 25, and then 23 on the fifth. Then on the sixth day, 64 attacks. You can see the pace is increasing, right? If we compare this to the, whatever you want to call it, the Solidarity campaign, when Hezbollah entered on October 8th, if you want to compare it to that, this is way more intense, right? Like, I know because I covered it, and I got in trouble for it. So I do remember. But that was very low intensity. The whole point behind that campaign was a support front for Gaza. It actually worked, because the idea was, let's draw the Israelis away from Gaza. And in the end, you had 1/3 of the Israeli army, of active troops in the Israeli army, sent up north to deal with Hezbollah. So it worked very well, like from a strategic point of view, and it very, very well saved lives. I'm sure, right? You had 1/3 of the Israeli army that was not genociding people in Gaza, that wasn't going through people's lingerie and underwear after they had blown up their houses, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so in terms of objectives, they fulfilled that, and in order to do that, to keep the Israeli troops up north and drawn away, they had to make sure that it was low intensity and that it's drawn out and it's sustained and protracted, right? This here is not about being protracted. Right now, what we're seeing in the Middle East is something else. Okay, and man, if you think this is spicy, wait till we talk about the US radars. Like, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is nothing compared to what we're going to talk about, right? And it's already something, isn't it? But you have to understand that this kind of conflict right now that we're seeing is of another nature and another intensity. It's completely different. The objectives are completely different. And again, I'll give you the truth straight from the horse's mouth, okay? This is from the Israelis. This is from the Times of Israel. Okay? You don't have to take my word for it or anyone else's. Listen to what they're saying, okay? So they knew they were next. Hezbollah rearmed for months after concluding war was inevitable, okay? So Hezbollah spent months restocking its arsenal of rockets and drones, using support from Iran and its own weapons factories to prepare for a new war with Israel, 6 sources familiar with the Lebanese terror group's preparations. So Hezbollah concluded that another round of fighting was inevitable, and that this time it could face an existential threat, according to the sources, okay? So these sources include Lebanese and also Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, okay? Right? All anonymous. Yeah, they talk a bit about how they used money, and then they kind of contradict themselves by saying, well, everyone was homeless because Israel blew their homes up. Yeah, I guess that's where the money went. I don't know what their point is, but definitely the production has gone up, and also the tactics have changed completely. I mean, if you look at how Hezbollah are approaching this, they're sending swarms of drones, right? They're sending swarms of drones. Iran are doing the same thing, by the way, right? Albeit slightly different. But Hezbollah are trying to overload and saturate. Now, we would see this before in 2023, 2024 with the Iron Dome, for example. They were doing this already back then. They would use decoys, get them to deplete the interceptors, and then they would actually launch the real payload and blow up the battery. So it's not a brand new tactic. What is new is that they're doing it for not just the Iron Dome, right? Their main objective here is to get rid of the infrastructure around the border, is to saturate the Israelis, keep them blind. It's really just like it's a complete campaign. It's the full package, is what I'm trying to impress upon you. It's the full package. It's not one kind of target. It's the full package. Everything from even the Leviathan gas field, right? They literally struck the offshore gas field. They're striking the air bases. They're striking the UAV, logistics, you name it, it's here. So there's completely different intensity, completely different target bank. And also, the fact that they have been able to I think I understand now why they launched those 6 projectiles, those 6 missiles on the first night. I think it was supposed to be a dud on purpose. I think that was the whole point. And it's very interesting reading the Israeli reaction, not just in the Times of Israel, but in other places, because it's so funny. It's like they're offended that Hezbollah knew their game, right, and kind of beat them to the punch. Because usually the Israelis and Americans will go and bomb someone and say, hey, it was preemptive. We had to do it. There was no choice. They were going to hit us. And it's usually a lie. In this case, it's 100% correct that the Israelis were going to come after Hezbollah. I think if you asked anyone, they would have told you that, right? It was obvious. It was evident the Israelis were not done with Hezbollah. They would be back. And so Hezbollah simply beat them to the punch. And the Israelis are kind of mad about it. They were also very angry, and I can show you some of these reactions on Twitter, just like kind of completely, anecdotal, just random reactions I found on Hebrew Twitter from Israelis, and you can see they're quite perplexed and surprised, and saying things like this: Hezbollah is dismantling us in the north. We need to say it fairly. It's a disgrace that they're not wiping out everything there. He means it's a disgrace the IDF are not wiping out everything in Lebanon. That's what he's saying. Right. And, here's another Israeli saying, they lied to us about Hezbollah, or I should say Hezbollah. It turns out that taking out Nasrallah and doing a pager attack doesn't faze them at all. I mean, I could have told you that a long time ago. You should read your own literature. I'm serious. They should read their own literature. I'm referring to this CIA manual that WikiLeaks released, where they say in the manual, it's CIA's own assessment, that killing Hezbollah and Hamas leaders doesn't work because they have a basically decentralized, compartmentalized command and control structure. Every cell, although I don't really like the word cell, it's more that has this like war of terror connotation, but basically, the point is you cannot just kill the leadership and expect the group to disintegrate. And this has been the assessment for decades, right? For decades, they've known this. So, I don't know why they're surprised, but okay. No one ever accused the Israelis of being military geniuses. So, these are just purely anecdotal, just like random ones, right? Bibi and his gang promised annihilation, but the reality, Hezbollah is here with a force that can't be ignored. And another one that I saw also was someone who was complaining that they were in next to the blue line, so near Kiryat Shimona and these Israeli settlements, and they could see electricity in Lebanon, whereas their electricity had been cut off. Right? Israelis are not used to this. They're used to blowing up other people's infrastructure and then laughing at them. So they were outraged. They were outraged that, how dare the Lebanese have electricity when we don't? This is a foreign concept to them, right? Anyway, they seem to be very, very upset about it. So, there's no denying it. And again, it's not me saying this. The Israelis themselves, the media are saying it. Random Israelis are saying it. Hezbollah are back, and they're back with a vengeance, and they are firing at an extraordinary intensity. Whoever thought that they were down and out, it was completely mistaken. And my, in a purely journalistic capacity, right? Just my professional assessment, their operational security of being able to rearm, even if Iran was giving it to them or if they built it themselves, it makes no difference. The point is that the fact that they were able to do that when they are in one of the most highly surveyed zones in the world, and under some of the biggest scrutiny from their own government, which is working with Israel, from the Americans, from the Israelis, from all these, you know, these big-brained, galaxy-sized brained intelligence agencies, and they were still able, under their noses, to rearm, is extraordinary. I mean, this is an objective fact, right? I know that what I just said carries a 14-year prison sentence because we have fascist bullshit laws in England, but I'm sorry, I'm not gonna, you know, lie to you, lie to millions of people watching this, and skew the truth. It's not my opinion. It's a fact that if you're able to pull that off from an operational security point of view, it is impressive, right? It's purely objective, and it speaks to the arrogance. It really does. It speaks to the arrogance of Western and Israeli intelligence, and media and politicians, the whole orchestra, you know, like, oh, we killed them, you know, we got rid of them, haha, look, we blew up their fingers with pagers, look, we took out Nasrallah, they're hollowed out. That was hubris. That was arrogance. That was arrogance. And I think they would all agree with me, maybe privately, right? Maybe not publicly, but they would agree with me that it was arrogance. It was foolish to say that. You know, this is how it is with guerrilla movements. You can't. There's one side that owns this land, and there's another that does not own this land, and one of them is always going to fight harder than the other. It's just the way it is, right? It's just an objective fact. Whether we're talking about Vietnam, or we're talking about, you know, and the French, not even the Americans, or we're talking about Algeria, or we're talking about Lebanon, it makes no difference. It's just the way it is. I don't write. It's not me who wrote history, and I didn't invent these rules of, you know, warfare. I just call it how it is. So they're definitely back, and I can guarantee you, by the time this live stream is done, there'll be more targets on that map. You know, I can barely keep up. It's really a lot. And one last thing. You know, the Israelis constantly issue these evacuation orders, right? They'll tell, you know, like a million people in Gaza, oh yeah, pack your shit and just go south. Like, you know, they're asking them to go on holiday or something. They do the same thing with Lebanon, right? And Hezbollah issued, you know, a reverse evacuation order and said, everyone in Kiryat Shimona, everyone who's within a 5-kilometer buffer, you have to leave, right? I suppose the whole point of that was like a bit of tongue in cheek, the way that Yemen have also been doing it. But anyway, that's besides the point. I think the real, you know, the Israelis right now are scrambling to figure out what the hell is going on, and their eyes and ears are being taken out. And, you know, this is not just Hezbollah is back. This is Hezbollah is back, and they're back stronger than before. It's just, you know, it's just the truth. Don't shoot the messenger.